Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really nice to see everybody, and hope you're having a good time at VRIC. Jeff, excited to be talking to you today. And as we discussed, we're going to go into some interesting topics that maybe people haven't heard from you about before. Where I thought we could begin. So I actually didn't know this, but you let me know you have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I wondered if you could tell us about that, and I'm sure it gives you an advantage in investing.
Yeah, so I haven't really revealed this or talked about it a lot before, but in my earlier life, I went to Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. Anybody know that school anywhere? Got a master's degree in counseling psychology. I loved it. I was actually a counselor for a while, a vocational counselor. Enjoyed it. I needed to find a second career path, if you will, and I guess we'll talk about that later. But the one thing I learned in there is that I've applied to my own investing that I realized early on was that a lot of the mistakes that we make as investors are usually emotionally based. They're usually based in psychology. We sell too soon. We don't buy. We hold on too long. We panic and sell. So how many of your decisions as an investor have been based in emotion as opposed to empirical data or evidence or whatever the case might be? So a good example for me is that in 2008, if you were investing in this sector, you know that everything crashed, including gold, and especially gold stocks, and especially the juniors, right? Well, at that point, I was a little too nervous to actually jump in and buy. And I was at Doug Casey's firm at the time, and we were recommending that you should, maybe take a position in the junior miners. I was too afraid to do that. And of course, what happened? They went on their second biggest bull run in history. So I vowed to myself that I would not let that happen again, based on emotions. And when we had the COVID crash, that was scary. Remember how scary that was? We didn't know what was going to happen around the world. I jumped in, and I jumped in a big way. And I bought a lot of silver then, multiple times, and I loaded up on juniors. So by September of that year, my entire mining portfolio had went 5x, and I ended the year up 4x. And so I didn't base it on emotion. I based that decision on empirical evidence and data and things like that. And that time it worked.
Okay, really interesting to go into that, because I think definitely I can identify with that difficulty in pulling the trigger. So let's talk about a little bit more about how you went from that previous career path to being a newsletter writer and doing what you do now, because there must be a story there.
Yeah, there's a little story there. So I was actually a subscriber to Doug Casey's newsletter, Independent Speculator, back in the day. And I had learned so much after my first year. It felt like a college education, in the sector. My dad was a gold prospector, but that was more field work and things like that. This was actually newsletter writing and learning how to invest in the sector. I learned a lot, so I wrote a letter to them after my first year, and it was time to renew my subscription. And thank you so much, learned a lot. And at the end I said, P.S., by the way, are you hiring? I thought, oh, that'd be fun, Well, it turns out Lobo Tigre, those of you who know him, was the one who wrote back to me and said, glad you're learning a lot. And yeah, we're always looking for writers if you want to submit something. And I thought, ooh, I could do that. So I submitted 13 different articles over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And he wrote back and said, hey, this is actually pretty good now, but if you're serious, we want you to go through, remember they called it the 8 Ps, that's how they evaluated a stock. We want you to go through the 8 Ps and evaluate a stock and see if you can do that. So I did that. It was for Aurelian Resources. Anybody remember that name? It was the big discovery down in Ecuador. And anyway, so I took a couple weeks to do that, and even made some calls down to South America and all that, submitted my report, and I didn't hear from him. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's that. That would have been fun. Well, it turns out he was in Africa on a mine tour at the time and didn't really have a lot of internet access. He wrote back and said, yeah, I'll recommend you to the CEO. So I started part-time on a trial basis to make sure I wasn't making things up and knew what I was talking about, and later became the editor of what was called Big Gold back then, and we did very well.
I love to hear these origin stories, so thanks for going into that. And now, of course, you have your own following. You're very active on Twitter. You've got your newsletter. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what the most common question is that you're getting right now from your audience, because I imagine it's going to be something that others in the room are wondering about.
I mean, I get a lot of questions, that's true, and you can contact me on the website for free. How much gold should I own? Should I buy this stock and that sort of thing? But, the one theme I've noticed from most questions is really based in, am I going to get rich in this sector? It really is based in, someone really wanting to know what they're going to do and how much they're really going to make in this sector. So I do spend a lot of time on evaluating miners. So I would encourage people to use that research, and it doesn't have to be just for me, of course, but to determine what they really want out of this sector, what's a realistic expectation, and which mining stocks really do have the most promising potential.
Right, and in your earlier workshop here at VRIC, you said resource investors are faced with the contrarian opportunity of a lifetime. So let's talk a little bit about that, and if you're comfortable calling a bottom in the juniors.
I am, and that's based on, a lot of people have recency bias, right? Last 3 years have been horrible for junior miners. I understand that. I didn't expect that, but here we are. So first of all, congratulations if you've held on. But I think if you look at history and have a historical bias instead of a recency bias, you'll be much better off. And what you'll notice is that, and I have a chart of this, there have been 11 distinct cycles, not in gold necessarily, but in gold stocks, in the miners. 11 different cycles. And every time they've sold off tremendously, like they have now, and every single time there's been another uptrend, another upcycle, sometimes small, sometimes very big, for gold stocks as a group. Every single time. And so we've had 11 of these now. We've had a down cycle now since the peak at the COVID bounce. So what comes after a down cycle? An upcycle. So I'm preparing for that. I don't know when it's going to happen. I do think we're close to a bottom here because of the Fed is going to be the short-term signal there for gold and gold stocks. Every time there's been easing, 9 out of the 11 times the gold price has risen and miners follow. So I do think we're on the cusp of that now. So.
Right. And, as you say, the when question, it's always hard to answer. But as we said in the title of this talk, we're going to kind of go there a little bit because you said you know exactly when the top for gold is going to be in. So I'm sure everybody would like to hear about that. I'm keen to hear the answer as well.
I know the exact moment gold is going to top. I can tell you right now when that's going to occur. We're years away from that, but I can tell you what to look for right now. So my brother was actually an actor. He was a stand-up comedian. He's been in a couple movies. He was on the show Friends, everybody knows the show Friends, right? So he met the whole cast and crew. So, and he said that everybody's friendly and helpful and all that. But he said, Jennifer Aniston is probably the most beautiful woman he's ever met in the world. She looks prettier even in person than she does already on TV and movies and all that. So I want you to kind of hold that vision there, okay? Whoever the most beautiful woman in the world is to you, okay? And then I want you to contrast that with this right here, okay? An aging, balding guy who's a little overweight, who can't tan for his life. I mean, I scare little children when I have a bathing suit on the beach, So, but I know what I'm doing with, mining stocks and all that. I'm not perfect, but so when Jennifer Aniston, somebody that looks like that, calls somebody that looks like this and says, Jeff, should I be buying mining stocks? Should I buy gold? When somebody that looks like that calls somebody that looks like this and asks that is the top in gold. Ladies and gentlemen, right there, that will be the top in gold. I swear, okay? So a year, 2, 3 from now, you could come up and ask me and just say, Jeff, has Jennifer Aniston called? And if I say no, you're good to go. Just keep investing, all right? But if I say yes, sell everything, dump everything. That is the top in gold when Jennifer Aniston calls me and asks about gold stocks. There you go.
Okay, I love it. It's not the answer I was expecting at all, but I love that. And, okay, so usually people don't usually like to give a when along with a price. So we've got the when, we've got that concept in our mind. Do you want to talk a little bit about price expectations for gold or your thoughts there?
So I think gold does make a new all-time high this year. And I don't mean like the little teases that we've had in the new all-time highs. I don't think the little ones. I think, a breakthrough that is sustainable. That's what I'm looking for. So whatever that is, 21, 22, 2300. I think gold could easily go to 24, 25. But I do think we have a breakthrough this year. And I do think that is going to, if we have that, that'll lead to a change in sentiment in the junior mining sector. And that's going to be a key for us. And that's when the easy money will be made, where we'll see stocks go 50%, 100%, 200% before we even really get going. So there will be some easy money made if you're invested at current levels. So I am looking for that this year.
Okay, and I know you did a whole other talk here where you went into some of your favorites in the junior sector, so we won't go over that again and repeat ourselves. But I do want to talk a little bit about the juniors, because when I come to events like this, especially during these tougher times coming out of a difficult year, we start to hear about how bloated the junior resource sector is. Does there need to be a cleanup? Would that be better? What are your thoughts on that? Do we need that kind of cleanup, or do people just need to get maybe a little bit better at choosing?
We're getting cleaned up now, right? Because there's companies out there that can't raise money, can't get cash, don't have cash, don't really have a lot of catalysts. Maybe some management, someone in management is leaving the company. So we're getting cleaned up a little bit. But here's the thing about that. There's always going to have to be cleanup in the junior sector. There's always going to have to be cleanup. There's 2,000 to 3,000 of these companies, and maybe in a mania we have 4,000 or 5,000. There's always going to be cleanup, so you have to get picky about who you choose and what junior miners you really want to invest in. So that part of this job is actually easy. When you look at a company, if they don't have the 2 C's, they're not investable. Cash and catalyst. They have to have cash, and I mean a meaningful amount of cash, so that they can advance their deposits in meaningful ways, whether that means a discovery or an significant advancement of a deposit or whatever the case might be.
Okay, and I want to kind of go back to on a little bit of a personal note here. So you talked about how you got into this sector, who you learned from. Right now, I think it would be interesting to learn who you look up to now. Who are the people you continue to learn from today?
So there's a long list of people that I actually would look up to. The great thing about being in the sector for a while is you get to know a lot of people, right? So, I can't name one person, that would be. I think I've mentioned before, people may know my dad was a gold prospector, so learned a lot from him, of course. He's in mining heaven now, but learned a lot from him and went on from there. Learned a lot from everybody at Doug Casey's firm back in the day, and even managers now, executives, CEOs, whatever, talking to them and just looking them in the eye and feeling them out and seeing, where they're at with not just their companies, but with the sector and things like that. That's very valuable. So for me, I think it's building a network. I think that's the best answer I could give. If you can build a network of people that you can trust, that's going to go a long way. And I hope that's me for some of you, but it doesn't matter if it's me. Find some people that you really trust and can really learn from. And that network, not just one person, but a network like that, can really go a long way. And your education is going to pay off, by the way, because if we're right about what's coming over the next 1, 2, 3 years, it's going to be very fun. So you want to make sure you're in the best of best.
Yeah, I think people would certainly maybe like to start having some fun. So if you had any final advice for people in 2024, it looks like it's going to be a pretty interesting year.
Yeah, so I invest with the barbell concept, on the one side and some very conservative stuff, and then on the other side, the more risky stuff, the speculation. I don't invest much in the middle of the barbell. Apple Computer maybe would be in the middle of the barbell. I don't invest there. I consider anything you put your money into, any stock, a speculation at this point. Even Apple would be a speculation. I'm heavily invested in the junior mining sector. My money is where my mouth is. So I practice what I preach, and I'm willing to share that with anybody who's interested.